through a couple key things. Now, as we look at Gen AI and the AI opportunity overall, it's really tough to wrap up, in one view, really what's going on. And so what we've done is broken that down into a couple different segments because it is quite different as you look at, as we start with the infrastructure level, there's lots of investment and a sizable amount of monetization occurring right now. And so Katie will take you through that. Then we'll look at on the SaaS side, a little bit different dynamic where there's a lot of solutions being developed and introduced, packaged and priced out in the market. However, there is still a lag in terms of true adoption at scale and the revenue opportunity manifesting itself on the SaaS side. And then we'll close looking at one of the more impactful changes that we see occurring in the space as we close out 2024 and look ahead to 2025 around agentic AI and solutions that kind of bridge some of those gaps between what vendors are offering today and what customers are looking to do, not just from a trial perspective with these solutions, but really implementing things that make a discernible difference in their business and generate the return that's needed to justify further investment. So all of our contact information will be available through the session. Please reach out with questions both during today's presentation as well as after, and look for some of our publications that include Gen AI and AI overall. So with that, I'll hand it off to Katie to start us in with the infrastructure review.
Great, thanks Alan, and hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So as Alan just mentioned, on this webinar, we're looking at Gen AI monetization and some of the really significant investments going on in cloud specifically. So with this, I'll just start with a very basic overview of where we see things today regarding the hyperscalers, and then we'll move on into SaaS and kind of a future outlook for 2025. So looking on this slide, so the four big hyperscalers for us, that's AWS, Azure, Google, and Oracle. We're seeing a pretty big acceleration in infrastructure revenue growth, and that's really because of two big factors. I think it's important to mention that legacy IT modernization activity is much healthier today than it was a year ago. So that is definitely moving the needle, I think particularly for AWS and Azure, who have a lot of mind share with those workloads. And then, of course, the other big factor is Gen AI. And so we're seeing those investments in AI compute, the supply of the resources that can really quickly be spun up, as well as the new data center capacity, bringing customers online, that materializes into top line growth pretty quickly. And so that's what we're seeing. And just to give you some context, you'll see this later in the deck as well, but we're estimating that those top four vendors are on track to generate about $20 billion in revenue for 2024, just for their AI and Gen AI offerings. So Microsoft is driving the bulk of that, but that's a very significant amount for these four vendors. And on the customer side, there's a couple things that work. We're still seeing that FOMO, if you will, where customers don't want to be left behind in this. And we saw the same thing some 10 years ago with cloud computing itself, and that customers were kind of rushing in to take advantage of this technology. We are now seeing that kind of fatigue hit, and that's a trend we expect to hit more of next year, and we'll touch on that. But vendors from an infrastructure perspective, certainly investing right now to meet the demand, and you can just really see it in some of the financial guidance that they're providing. So that's a bit on the top line, but from a profitability perspective, some pretty significant gains there as well, and obviously that uptick in growth playing a big role. We also see it on the depreciation that all the vendors have extended the useful lives of their servers and so on. So that's playing a role. We are also seeing a lot of rationalization on the OpEx side. And of course, headcount is huge there. It's not just hitting the corporate entities overall anymore. It is impacting the cloud businesses. So we're seeing that. And I think it ties into the ecosystem as well. These vendors are becoming much more adept at leveraging the channel. They're going to market with their partners better. And so that can really act as an efficiency lever as well. So moving on, we're talking about vendor investment strategies, but it's not just in the infrastructure. We're looking at their overall portfolios and their partners. And so I just mentioned a bit about Gen AI fatigue. We think as that takes shape, that's when customers will kind of start to go back and maybe reevaluate their data strategy and relook at some of the components, both in the underlying architecture and then also the governance rules around that data. So again, customers kind of went all in on this cloud first vision, and then they pivoted and said, well, we don't want to be cloud first necessarily. We want to be quote unquote cloud smart. And so I think we're going to see a similar dynamic here with regards to how customers view data management and its role in Gen AI. And so that trend really aligns nicely with the feedback that we've been getting from cloud providers. And so on this slide, you may have seen us reference this research before. This is from our Voice of the Partner study, where we ask different groups of vendors, but including cloud vendors, where do you see the most partner-sourced opportunity hitting over the next 2 years? And so for cloud vendors, it was data management and data strategy. And so we believe that sends a really strong message to the hyperscalers partners about the importance of having a data foundation in place before Gen AI can effectively be scaled. And so I think the takeaway for partners is really just making sure priorities are aligned with the cloud providers when it comes to data management, and then also data strategy and really the upfront tasks of, helping customers assess, design, craft a strategy, and also overcoming all the change management and the cultural obstacles that are still very pervasive when it comes to data. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the hyperscalers. And so our findings revealed that the cloud vendors could do a better job of soliciting feedback from other partners and ultimately use that to decide where these ecosystems or multi-partner opportunities really live so that they can reach new audiences and really better engage customers. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense as to what we're looking at as part of our Voice of the Partner research, as well as the important role we think data and the data architecture and also governance will continue to play in Gen AI. And so with that, I'm going to pass it over to Alex to walk us through what's going on in enterprise SaaS.
Great. Thank you, Katie. Yeah, I just wanted to start us off today, just kind of, taking a look back and looking at where R&D budgets have been, and just to get a grasp of how these SaaS vendors are thinking about the upfront investment associated with the Gen AI opportunity and some of the data cloud and data platform that goes along with it. So we look at pure absolute dollars. Salesforce is the leading spender within our covered SaaS vendors. I would say that as a percentage of revenue, they are towards the bottom of the pack, but just when we look at raw dollars, they continue to stand out. Their R&D budgets from 2022 through 2024, they've been relatively flat, troughing a little bit in 4Q 22 and then rising again throughout 2023 and into 2024. But when we look at it sort of on that broad scope, it does look a little bit flatter. And when we compare that to what we're seeing from the other vendors have been a little bit more of a steady rise, and we do see a little bit more of willing to spend a higher percentage of revenue relative to the R&D spend, 2% of revenue. Workday being the biggest spender when we look at it from that angle, though they are starting to come down a little bit. I think that when we think about how these dollars are being spent, I think that one, I would say that acquisitions continue to be a key way that these vendors are adding value or adding capabilities to their portfolio, and that's something that's not necessarily being captured here. When we talk about Salesforce specifically, they did a few acquisitions in September, 2 of them being to focus on adding data compliance, data security, data management capabilities to their data cloud offering. So there's definitely a lot of R&D dollars being funneled into these data platforms and the supplementary platform assets, as well as into AI research and AI development. When we think about the long-term opportunity, I think that all the SaaS vendors are pretty unanimous in deciding that this is really something that they have to be offering to customers in that long term. It's an important part of their competitive positioning. As Alan mentioned, when we think about revenue recognition today from Gen AI and AI, it still is a fairly de minimis part. I think that when we think about, and just to highlight some of that, Microsoft is willing to really, flat out talk about how much revenue contribution from AI is going into Azure. But when we talk about how much contribution is going into a segment like their new Microsoft 365 commercial segment, it's cited as a driver, but we're not really seeing it called out. So, and I don't really hear much talk from really any of the other SaaS providers in terms of how much is starting to be generated through these AI tools. So it's still a revenue driver that is a long-term opportunity for these vendors, but not necessarily something that is driving the needle. And that's really led to a continued deceleration in top line growth, really for all the vendors covered here. SAP Cloud, when we just did our recent benchmarking, they're really one of the only vendors that's driving top line acceleration right now. And a big part of that is just going to be driven by, more traditional ERP migration dynamics and not necessarily contribution from AI tooling. So this is something that vendors are spending on, preparing for, but it's something that is more of a long-term opportunity. To start talking a little bit more about product strategy, I'm sure we've all heard the term agentic AI at this point. We've definitely hit the point in the development cycle of transitioning and evolving from the generative AI nomenclature to the agentic nomenclature. We're talking about enterprise SaaS. And the big difference there to highlight is that, this is all based on the transformer neural network. So the base architecture for these new tools is the same. But what is changing is the tasks that are being pursued by the technology. When we talk about agentic AI, these are typically multi-step processes. So instead of entering a prompt for a specific output, you're entering a prompt and you're allowing the agent to fulfill a number of tasks. When we talk about how they are making these multi-step processes possible, it really also comes down to how the models are being trained and implemented within the tools. One of the vendors that I think I really enjoy talking about and learning about when it comes to their AI strategy has always been Salesforce. I think that they have a fairly differentiated AI development roadmap. When we talk about models, a lot of the vendors are using third-party models. Salesforce and ServiceNow, they stand out as two SaaS vendors that have been developing proprietary models. To focus on Salesforce's proprietary models for a second, they actually call these large action models, which, in a way can be considered marketing fluff, but at the same time, I do think there's some validity to naming it around basically just how they're training these models and focusing on process data and process metadata. I would say that the use of the word large is a bit of a stretch when we look at the nomenclature that's being used for foundation models, in looking at the parameter count of their models. These are models that are 22 billion parameters, and the typical standard for a more flagship large language model developed by an OpenAI or Anthropic, we're pushing over 100 and into close to 200 billion in some cases. So at 22, these are medium-sized models at best, and realistically should be considered to be small action models. And that's something that, it makes sense when we talk about how the upfront costs for models are growing at a fairly exponential rate. And when we talk about training models around really niche data sets, sticking to small language models, small action models, really is sort of a necessity and something that is really kind of forced into it. We can't train these large, over 100 billion parameter models on the niche data sets that we would want to when it comes down to, really trying to target a specific task within CRM. So, but, just how deep they've gone into this contextualization process with building these models, it does stand out. And it's something that I think is going to be a major driver of their ability to create value for customers, and ultimately will be something that has a pretty profound impact on their competitive position and their ability to execute an AI strategy. Microsoft, of course, one of the biggest names in AI ever since its investment into OpenAI. They continue to come out with their own pre-built agents for Dynamics 365, targeting all of the customer experience in CRM, as well as the stuff on the ERP side, bringing the similar agent development capabilities that Agentforce has with their Copilot Studio. They typically are still relying on OpenAI models. They are developing their own small language models as well, but a little bit less in terms of taking their workflow specific data and creating niche models to support these copilots. SAP, they're a similar case in that they're relying on third-party models, but really when we talk about what SAP has built around with their integration suite and sort of bringing process automation to their workflows, I think that the development that they're doing with Joule now really complements that and is creating an area where they can really drive a lot of process automation and using natural language prompts to create these integrations and then action them in production. So again, another company that I think is showing a lot of momentum and doing a lot to really message well around their AI roadmap, and something that I expect to be monetized well over the long term. And just kind of closing off quickly here, Adobe, of course, with content generation and creative media and their document cloud, this really great alignment between GenAI, agentic AI capabilities and their workflows. So something that is really already showing up in customer traction, and something that I expect to be a revenue driver for the company over the long term. That finishes up for me. Now I'm going to hand it off to Gunnar, who's going to give us a little bit of a rundown into some of the partnerships that are starting to be formed between the third-party model developer specialists and the cloud players. Gunnar?
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. So yeah, taking it away from here. So now we're going to be taking a look at the AI model developers themselves and their ongoing partnership strategies. With that said, we're recognizing that AI model developers are focusing their strategies on collaborating with hyperscalers and SaaS vendors as a way to expand the delivery and innovation of the AI solutions to a wider ecosystem. Some of the largest model developers like OpenAI, Cohere, Anthropic, Hugging Face, and more are among these companies. So now I'm going to go over these developers and highlight some key and recent partnerships that highlight this ongoing motion. Starting with OpenAI, founded in 2015. Their key partner as of right now is Microsoft. Their partnership started in 2019 when Microsoft invested $1 billion into the company and became its exclusive cloud provider through Azure. In 2020, OpenAI's models, including GPT-3, were integrated into Azure, making AI tools widely accessible to their ecosystem. And by 2021, Microsoft embedded GPT-3 products into Word and Excel, into what we now know as Copilot. And then into 2023, GPT-4 was integrated into Microsoft 365 and Azure. So looking at their current partner strategy, it's all about the integration delivery of these GPT products, and we can see that in their recent partnerships throughout this year. First, looking at their partnership in May of this year with Stack Overflow, where the partnership centered on the integration of GPT-3 to enhance the coding and assistance and smarter answers on their platform. And again, with Oracle and Microsoft in June of this year, with a combination of AI models on OCI and Microsoft's AI tools to drive innovation scalability, also making Oracle an additional cloud provider for OpenAI. Now looking at Anthropic, founded in 2021, a key partner for them is AWS, and that started in 2021, and AWS started to provide the infrastructure and computing resources needed to scale Anthropic's models. In 2022, there was an integration of Amazon SageMaker into their models, which helped streamline model development and deployment while managing costs for the company. And by 2023, AWS's global infrastructure and tools like Elastic Inference enabled Anthropic to deploy AI models at scale, making them accessible to enterprises across the world. So the current partnership strategy focuses on the delivery of their flagship Claude model family. And some recent partnerships that highlight that is their partnership with Zendesk and AWS in April. And that was aimed to support enterprise workflows using Amazon Bedrock and Claude 3 for over 100,000 customers. And then again with Salesforce in September, where they expanded the delivery of the Claude model family through the sales platform and Amazon Bedrock there. Now looking at Cohere, which was founded in 2019, their key partner is Google Cloud, and that started in 2021. And Google Cloud started to support Cohere by providing AI infrastructure, including TPUs and Vertex AI to help scale and optimize NLP models. And this also helps to ensure low latency access while driving innovation in natural language understanding. Their current partnership strategy focuses on the integration of their models with their partner channel. And some partnerships that highlight that is their one with Oracle in March of this year, where they're leveraging Oracle's infrastructure and AI services to improve the scalability and performance of their large language models for enterprise applications and workflows. And then again with MongoDB in May, where they integrated large language models through their Atlas platform to assist developers to build AI-powered search and data applications. Now looking at Hugging Face, which was founded in 2016, their key partner has been AWS. That started in 2020 when AWS started to support Hugging Face by providing the infrastructure for model hosting, training, and deployment, including EC2, GPUs, and SageMaker, while helping to expand globally through the Hugging Face Hub in 2023. Their current partnership strategy involves the delivery and innovation of their model family through their partner channel. Some partnerships that highlight that was Google Cloud in January of this year, where they expanded the delivery of open source models and tools to the cloud, supporting developers to deploy, scale, and train models learning on Google's infrastructure. And then again in September this year with IBM and NASA, where they're co-developing an open source AI model for analyzing weather and climate data delivered through the Hugging Face platform. So with all that being said, what does that mean for the future and why is that important to understand? We believe that as AI model developers look to 2025 and beyond, that partnering with these hyperscalers like Microsoft, AWS, Google Cloud, and SaaS vendors alike are key to scaling AI solutions and driving innovation. These partnerships provide essential infrastructure, computing power, and AI tools that enable developers to reach global markets, improve performance, and reduce costs. By integrating AI with SaaS platforms, developers can accelerate adoption and enhance user experiences. These collaborations overall will expand market presence, foster faster innovation, and position AI developers for sustained growth in an evolving ecosystem. So with that said, I'm going to pass it back on to Alan with some forward-moving statements. Alan?
Sounds great. Thanks, Gunnar. So we wanted to put together this slide really to provide kind of a financial snapshot for, through the end of this year and then projecting forward the balance between the investment required for the largest cloud platforms and the returns that we're estimating so far to show the imbalance between those two. And I think in a lot of ways, this is an imbalance that's shared on the vendor side, but also with customers in terms of fairly significant outlays required to be early in these AI and Gen AI solutions in terms of adopting and enabling them, and the struggle with the business case, the financial case for capturing returns, being able to demonstrate that in a way that makes the whole model work from a business perspective. And as I said, we're showing the vendor side here, and obviously there's a lot more revenue generation, revenue opportunity needed because even through 2026, there's significant differences. It's not 10 to 1, but it's close in terms of what they're investing to support and enable in the new data center builds and the build outs from an infrastructure and equipment perspective, energy, all those things are going to make the bill quite high to enable a lot of these Gen AI and AI services. There's still a lot of uncertainty around when, how much, and the feasibility of monetizing that for them. And so I think there is a disillusionment on behalf of customers. However, for these platform providers, all of the FOMO that motivated customers to get started is motivating these platform providers to make investment plans now in order to monetize 2-3 years down the road once those are up and running, and they can actually package in a way that aligns to what customers are looking for and can actually deliver a business benefit that sustains this market going forward. So we don't think it's going to be figured out next year in terms of those killer use cases and the right way to measure ROI and the right way to, Katie talked about before about not just being cloud first, but being cloud smart. We think a lot of customers are going to take that same approach with AI and GenAI. It really kind of started midway through this year as we had our customer conversations and interviews about looking for the right balance of investment with how they're actually using it, what they're getting from those solutions that have been put in place. That's going to continue into next year as they really look to put the proof in terms of the payoff and the promised benefit for a lot of these solutions. So that'll be really pivotal as we move into 2025. So one thing that we think is going to have a big difference and make an impact here is this shift to not just Gen AI enabled solutions, but agentic solutions that tie together a lot of different elements. So all the building blocks are there for what started with AI multiple years ago, what started with generative AI last year, and then progressing to a framework that really provides some of those distinct and identifiable benefits for customers that are using these solutions. So it puts it in the framework in a lot of ways, at least to start, of the solutions that they're relying on for enterprise workloads, enterprise use cases around CRM, ERP, HR, those things that really run the business for them and provide a lot of access to data and insight that can be very distinct in terms of quicker times to resolution, being able to improve efficiency with supply chains, those types of things that it's not just making knowledge workers more productive in kind of an opaque way, very distinct in terms of the benefits that can be enabled through more independent, autonomous, agent-based use cases that can improve the results, the quality, cost savings, and even revenue generation, potentially being able to track and monitor that, we think is revolutionary in terms of really taking one of the biggest problems, which is the measurement of the benefits of Gen AI and providing a lot more clarity there and tying into a framework that isn't outside of what the business is doing today. It's really integrated at the core by leveraging some of those partnerships with the enterprise solutions. And that's what makes Salesforce, not just for their presence with the SaaS solution suite, but really the overall ecosystem, the amount of solutions that are built on that platform, make it very powerful in terms of adding in agentic solutions. And so they're looking at hundreds of millions, billions of agents being in production within the next couple of years. And so that gets to the next kind of shift that we think is going to come as a result of this. So in a lot of ways, the pricing for Gen AI solutions has been a throwback to some of the traditional software licensing where it's suite-based. It's difficult to really measure the usage, map the usage to the payment for both vendors as well as customers. And so in some ways, this is an alignment. If you look at metered consumption-based pricing models that can be enabled through these agent-based solutions, it brings together the best interests of the provider. So they're spending hundreds of billions of dollars to enable these solutions. And so instead of providing all-you-can-eat free access for the early days of trials and just getting the capabilities out there, it becomes a metered one that maps their investment to the returns that they're getting. And then same on the customer side, where they can very clearly see the benefit, and the pricing matches in a like-for-like way. And so we think that will be, one of the outcomes once we, kind of get through the end of this year and into a space where agentic solutions are actually being put into production and used more commonly. That alignment we think is important from a packaging and a monetization perspective. And so it really kind of, works through some of those the trough of disillusionment with customers, as well as gets vendors to a space where if you look at the imbalance between their investment and the returns, they're able to monetize in a scalable way, and really kind of make the business case for a market that makes sense in the 5 to 10 year timeframe. All right, so with that, so that's kind of our look forward to close. With that, we have a couple questions in the chat, but please add more, ask us to go a little bit deeper. And with that, we'll take a quick pause, collect what we have for questions, and start to go through them. All right, so the first question is, how do you view public versus hybrid versus private cloud GenAI deployments through 2025?
Yeah, I can start and then I'll open it back up to you guys for your thoughts. I know our findings suggest that customers are taking a very hybrid approach to this. I think we're seeing a lot of value in developing, training, and testing models in public cloud and moving on-prem for production. I think that sentiment is pretty broad. We see customers landing in the public cloud really for access to innovation and skills. I don't know that GenAI itself necessarily changes the game in terms of why customers are leveraging those services, but we do know that the maturing enterprise customer is also looking beyond just cost, and they view cloud as less of a necessity to run IT, but as part of the business strategy for a competitive advantage. So that shift in behavior is going to be important and kind of drive these considerations, but we are seeing it very hybrid focused right now, and we'll continue to monitor that as we talk to more customers through 2025.
Things that I would just add to that, it kind of goes into the idea of access to innovation for why some of these workloads or these training workloads are being pursued in the cloud. Access to third-party data sets is another big driver for customers that has shown up in our customer research studies. So that's an area that continues to evolve and be a part of a lot of the hyperscalers and enterprise SaaS vendors. A lot of what they offer to within their development platforms.
Okay, great. Next question. Are GenAI agents in these SaaS examples still considered to be an LLM or an SLM, a language model, or are they other types of models based on transformers?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So LLM, SLM, this is nomenclature that is really up to the developer of the model. When I think about the Salesforce example, they're calling it a large action model. So Salesforce would tell you no, that this is something different than an LLM, SLM. When you get into the raw architecture, though, and what really matters, it is a transformer neural network that is driving the capability. And so that is the common denominator between all of these. The difference being the data that the model is being trained on. And instead of going through the internet and taking a bunch of text data and training a model on that and producing a more general language-oriented tuned model, really focusing on the process data and the process metadata that's specific to a CRM platform, and training the transformer neural network on that data instead, to sort of tweak the outcome and get to this large action model that Salesforce is marketing.
Okay, great. Next question is, how are the enterprise SaaS partners partnering within each other to support their broader AI strategy? So I think it's the connection between different SaaS providers in terms of their AI strategies.
Yeah, absolutely. This one of the key partnerships that we've seen so far in enterprise SaaS is the relationship between Salesforce and Workday, where Workday is leaning on Salesforce to support the development of an employee experience agent. So, Workday has its own AI strategy and is pursuing GenAI and AI agents on its own to an extent, but I think recognizing sort of the robust platform that Salesforce has brought to market and kind of trying to lean on that as it kind of goes deeper with these agentic AI capabilities. Another big part of it is what we've seen kind of over the past 3 to 6 months is this emerging trend around bidirectional prompting, where we're creating these centralized user interfaces where somebody working on Microsoft is also able to work on and prompt an AI agent or a co-pilot on an SAP workflow. So that example being, Microsoft and SAP, Microsoft and ServiceNow. That's kind of the three-way partner ecosystem that's formed already around Microsoft Copilot. And then Salesforce has also been very proactive in this area as well, positioning Slack as a central UI for prompting a whole host of AI tools, including Workday's. So, and this kind of falls into sort of Salesforce's strategy for Slack, really since it bought it. They talked about Slack as the digital HQ and really trying to make Slack the central point from managing workflows for a while now. And I do think that agentic AI and using the ability to use natural language to initiate and initiate tasks within Customer 360 workflows, it brings that technological promise a step closer. And so the ability to go beyond CRM is going to be a big part of delivering that promise as well. And so they're going to be very active in trying to get other enterprise SaaS vendors integrated with Slack, and the ability to have this bidirectional prompting between Slack and Workday.